Get out of this house. You don't belong at this table, at this party, or anywhere near my son. You came from nothing, and nothing is exactly what you are." The woman he said it to didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at him with those steady gray eyes and said, very quietly, "I think you should wait before you finish that sentence, Mr. Whitmore." He didn't wait. He never did. 3 hours earlier, the Whitmore estate looked the way it always did when Warren Whitmore wanted people to feel small. The chandeliers were lit at full brightness. The catering staff moved in silent formation. 200 guests arrived in cars that cost more than most people made in a year, and every one of them understood, without being told, that the evening was not a celebration. It was a demonstration. Warren Whitmore was showing them what he had built and what he intended to keep. His son, Cole, stood near the fireplace with a glass he hadn't touched. He'd been back from Portland for 3 weeks, and in that time, his father had barely looked at him. Not because he was displeased with Cole's career. Cole ran the Pacific division of the family's commercial real estate firm, and ran it well. Warren was displeased with the woman Cole had brought home. Her name was Avery. She'd arrived that evening in a navy dress, no heels, no statement jewelry. She'd driven herself in a 10-year-old Subaru that the valet had eyed like it was a stray dog wandering onto the lawn. She was 41 years old, which Warren had found out and never let go of. She had no title he recognized, no family name that carried weight in the circles he moved in, and no apparent interest in impressing anyone. That last part bothered him most. At the door, she'd stopped to help a young woman from the catering company, who had dropped an entire tray of champagne flutes on the stone steps. Not gestured vaguely in her direction. Stopped, crouched down, and helped pick up every piece of broken glass by hand, asking the woman her name, asking if she'd cut herself, asking if she needed a few minutes before going back in. The catering woman had looked at Avery like no guest had ever spoken to her like a human being, which was probably true. His father watched this from the window, and he saw exactly what his father thought of it. Warren Whitmore had started with nothing. He'd built his fortune over 40 years through a combination of genuine intelligence and a ferocious terror of being poor again. The problem with that kind of terror is that it doesn't go away when the money comes. It just turns inward, and then outward, and eventually it starts looking like cruelty. Cole had grown up watching his father cut people down the way other men cut grass. Efficiently, regularly, and without any particular feeling about it. Avery circulated through the party the way she did everything, without performance. She remembered names. She asked follow-up questions. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, it was specific. Not the vague flattery Warren's guests traded like currency, but real sentences about real things. The wife of a state senator spent 20 minutes talking to her about a wetlands preservation case that had been stuck in federal court for 3 years, and walked away looking like she'd had the most useful conversation of the evening. Cole had noticed. A few others had noticed. Warren noticed too, and decided it was calculated. He found Cole near the library just before 9. "Who is she, Cole?" Not a question, a demand. "She's Avery. You know her name, Dad. I know the name you gave me. I don't know who she is, where she comes from, what her family does. You've been with this woman for 2 years, and you've told me nothing. I told you she's a federal attorney. Retired, Warren said. Retired at 41. What does that mean? What does that tell me? It means she was done, Cole said. Done. Warren repeated the word like it was a euphemism for something shameful. Nobody's done at 41 unless they have to be. Cole looked at his father. He knew this version of him. He'd been seeing it since he was 12 years old. Leave her alone tonight, Cole said. Please. Warren straightened his cuffs. He was 68, silver-haired, broad through the shoulders, and he moved through a room like a man who had never once been told no by anyone who mattered to him. I'm going to speak to her, he said. That's all. I just want to speak to her. He found Avery near the tall windows at the far end of the ballroom, looking out at the water. She had a glass of sparkling water, not wine. That bothered him too, though he couldn't have explained why. You, he said. She turned. Yes, Mr. Whitmore? I want to understand something. He kept his voice low, conversational. He was good at this, making the knife sound friendly until it was already in. My son has been involved with you for 2 years. 2 years, and in that time, I've learned almost nothing about who you are or where you come from. I'm from outside Knoxville originally, Avery said. My mother was a school teacher. My father ran a hardware store. Warren smiled. That explained things, he thought. That explained the dress and the car, and the way she'd crouched on the steps picking up broken glass. She wasn't performing modesty. She just didn't know any better. And your work. He spread his hands. A federal attorney. Retired. I practiced for 16 years, she said. And now? I do some consulting. Some advisory work. Advisory work, he repeated. He let the pause sit there. Advisory work is what people say when there isn't anything specific enough to say. Avery's expression didn't change. She just waited. Let me be direct, Warren said, because I think you'd prefer that. Please, she said, my son is going to inherit something significant. This company, these properties, relationships that took 4 decades to build. I need to know that the woman in his life understands that. Understands the weight of it. He paused. And I need to know that she isn't here because she does. I'm here because Cole asked me to come, Avery said. That's not what I mean, and you know it. She tilted her head slightly. Then say what you mean, Mr. Whitmore. Something shifted in his face. He'd expected deflection or apology, or the bright, forced smile women usually put on when he pushed. He hadn't expected her to hold the ground this evenly. He decided she was arrogant. Arrogance he knew how to handle. You don't come from money, he said. That's not a judgment. It's an observation. And women who don't come from money, who attach themselves to men who do, they have a particular kind of ambition. I've seen it. I've paid for it. He looked at her dress, at her flat shoes, at the sparkling water. You may dress like you don't care about money, but that's sometimes the most careful calculation of all. Avery was quiet for a moment. Then she said, How long did it take you to lose your first business? Warren blinked. What? The freight company, in '94. You were 29 days from filing, and the SBA loan came through on a Thursday. You've told that story at 3 different industry dinners in the last decade. She looked at him steadily. I heard it the first time. I looked up the filing records the second time because I was curious whether the numbers matched the story. They did. Almost exactly. Warren's jaw tightened. What is your point? My point is that you know what it costs to start with nothing. You said so yourself, in your own words, to rooms full of people. And then you walked across your own ballroom and looked at me like I was a stain on the floor, because my mother was a schoolteacher. She said it without heat. That was the thing that caught him, the absence of any anger in it. She wasn't performing injury. She was just saying what was true. Cole appeared at Warren's shoulder. "Dad, I'm speaking to her. I can see that." Warren turned back to Avery. His voice dropped lower. The pleasant knife register. "Whatever my son has told you, whatever picture he's painted of this family and what comes with it, I want you to understand something clearly. I have protected this company for 40 years. I will not stand by and watch it become complicated by someone whose background I cannot account for." He paused. "You seem intelligent. Intelligent enough to understand what I'm saying." "What are you saying?" Avery asked. "I'm saying that there is a version of tonight that ends with everyone comfortable, and there is a version that doesn't." He looked at Cole, then back at her. "I'd prefer the first one. I suspect you would too." Cole's voice was very quiet. "Dad, stop." "I'm giving her an option," Warren said. "That's more than most people get from me." "What's the option?" Avery asked. Warren looked at her. "The option is that you leave tonight, gracefully, on your own terms, and Cole and I have a conversation that is long overdue." He spread his hands. "You're a bright woman. You'll find another situation. Something more, suited to where you come from." The room had drifted closer, the way rooms do when they sense blood in the water. 30-40 people now within range, holding their glasses, their conversations suspended. Cole stepped forward. "We're done here." "We are not done," Warren said, and his voice carried now, deliberate. He wanted the audience. He always played better with one. He turned to face the room more fully, this man who had built 4 decades of a name he was afraid of losing. "You all know me. You know what I've built here." He gestured toward Cole and Avery. "My son has made a choice that I have tried privately to address. Since that hasn't worked, let me be clear for everyone in this room who cares about what this family stands for. He is throwing his future away. For a woman nobody in this room has ever heard of, who came from nowhere, who has no name, no standing, no history any of us can vouch for." He pointed at Avery. "Get out of this house. You don't belong at this table, at this party, or anywhere near my son. You came from nothing. And nothing is exactly what you are." The room went silent. Someone's ice shifted in a glass, and Avery said, "I think you should wait before you finish that sentence, Mr. Whitmore." He laughed, short and contemptuous. "I just did finish it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Cole. Cole nodded barely. She reached into her small bag and took out her phone. She made one call, turned slightly away, and said 3 words. "You can come in." Then she put the phone back in her bag and folded her hands and waited. Warren stared at her. "What are you doing?" "Waiting," she said. "The same thing I've been doing for 2 years. Waiting to see who you really are." Before he could answer, there was a sound at the far end of the room. The tall double doors opened, and a woman walked in. She was in her late 60s, silver hair cut short, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's mortgages, but somehow looked like she'd pulled it off a hook without thinking about it. She moved with the unhurried confidence of a person who had walked into rooms like this her entire life and found them smaller than expected every time. Behind her, 2 men in dark suits stopped just inside the door and didn't move further. not security in the aggressive sense, more like ballast. Warren didn't recognize her at first. Most people in the room didn't, but 4 people did. James Alcott, who ran the largest private equity firm in New England, set down his glass slowly. The way you set something down when your hands have gone unsteady. Senator Patricia Vance's wife, the one who'd spent 20 minutes talking wetlands law with Avery, put a hand briefly on her husband's arm. Cole's company attorney, who had come as a guest, went the color of old paper. And Thomas Hale, who managed Warren's banking relationships and had been standing near the bar talking to a city councilman, made a small sound that was not quite a word and not quite a breath, and was the closest Thomas Hale had come to losing his composure in 23 years of professional life. Because the woman who had just walked into Warren Whitmore's ballroom was Judge Marin Calloway, retired Associate Justice of the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. Author of 41 published opinions, 3 of which had been cited by the Supreme Court. Former U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. Chair of the National Judicial Ethics Advisory Board. And, for the past 11 years, one of the most sought-after arbitration consultants in the country. Which was the advisory work she did, the work Avery had described so briefly when Warren asked. And Marin Calloway, who had walked across a room with 20 years of federal authority behind her shoulders, put her hand on Avery's arm and looked at the man who had just told daughter she came from nothing. "I heard that," she said. Her voice was the kind of quiet that carries. Warren's face had gone wrong. His eyes were moving between Avery and this woman in a way that wasn't connecting fast enough. Then it did. "Avery," he said. The name came out differently than it had before. "My daughter," Marin said, "spent 16 years as a federal prosecutor. She tried 78 cases. She won 66. She left at 41 because she had done what she set out to do, and she wanted the rest of her life to be her own choosings." She paused. "She drove here tonight in a car she's had since law school because she decided a long time ago that her net worth was not a performance. She is consulting for 4 agencies simultaneously, one of which," she looked around the room with the mild, unhurried interest of a woman checking a menu, "involves the financial licensing board that reviewed your company's application for foreign investment status last quarter." The room was absolutely still. Thomas Hale had set down his drink and was pressing his fingers to his mouth. Warren's voice came out thin. "The application is pending." "I know," Marin said. "I've recused myself, obviously." She tilted her head, but other members of the board were in this room tonight. She didn't look at anyone specifically, which somehow made everyone feel looked at. I'm sure they found the evening educational. Cole stood beside Avery now, his hand in hers, watching his father, the way you watch something happen that you knew was coming, and still couldn't stop. Warren's hand found the back of a chair. He gripped it. He was thinking about the application. He was thinking about 40 years. He was thinking about a list of phone calls he would need to make before 7 in the morning, and which of them could still be made. He was also thinking about what he had said in front of 200 people to the daughter of Marin Calloway. He opened his mouth. "There has been a misunderstanding," he said. His voice was a different register than it had been 20 minutes ago. The performance had gone out of it. He sounded, for the first time, like what he actually was, a 68-year-old man who had just made an irreversible mistake in public and knew it. I didn't know who. That's exactly the problem, Marin said quietly and without any cruelty. You didn't know. And what you did when you didn't know, that's the part you can't take back. She wasn't performing. She wasn't enjoying it. She was just saying what was true, which was something Cole realized, that Avery had been doing the entire evening. Like mother, like daughter. Warren looked at his son. Cole. Cole. Cole looked back at him. He thought about every version of this conversation he'd rehearsed on the drive up. What he would say when his father finally crossed the line far enough that something had to be said. How he would keep his voice level. How he would be the reasonable one. He thought about Avery crouching on the steps to pick up broken glass and asking a stranger's name. He thought about 2 years of Sunday dinners where his father had made her feel like a guest rather than family. 2 years of pointed questions and pleasant-sounding insults, and the very particular kind of cruelty that wears the costume of concern. He said, "We're leaving." And he said it quietly, without drama, and walked toward the door with Avery's hand in his. Marin watched them go. Then she looked at Warren one last time. She did not give him a final line. She didn't need one. She just held his gaze for a moment the way a person holds a door for someone, not as a gift, exactly, but as a choice, and then she turned and followed her daughter out into the night. The 2 men in dark suits went with her. The doors closed. For a long beat, 200 people stood in Warren Whitmore's ballroom and said nothing. Then Thomas Hale excused himself quietly, and the senator's wife collected her coat, and the attorney checked his phone, and the sound of polite conversation started back up, muted, not quite meeting eyes. The sound of people deciding how to describe what they had just witnessed. The valet retrieved Avery's car. She drove. Cole sat in the passenger seat with his jacket over his lap and didn't say anything for a long time. The estate lights disappeared in the rearview mirror. The road curved down along the water and the night came in around them, quiet and dark. Then Avery said, "You okay?" He laughed. "It came out a little rough. Yeah, are you?" "I've been okay." She glanced at him. "I've been okay since the 3rd time your father asked me if I was sure I understood what his company was worth." She paused. "I just wanted to give him time to be something different before I stopped being polite about it." Cole looked at her profile in the dark car. 2 years, he said. "I know. You could have told me. I know that too. Why didn't you?" She was quiet for a moment, because I needed to know that you'd choose me when it mattered. She kept her eyes on the road. Not because of my mother, not because of any board or application or thing that could be leveraged. Just because you chose me. She paused. And you did. He didn't say anything. He just reached over and took her hand on the gear shift and held it. His father called at 7:14 the next morning. Cole didn't answer. He called again at 9:30. Cole let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 4 minutes long, and it contained, buried in 3.5 minutes of justification and context and explanation, about 20 seconds of something that might have been an apology, though it was hard to be certain. The Investment Licensing Board completed its review 6 weeks later. The application was approved with conditions. The conditions were standard. Nothing was punitive. Nothing suggested influence. Warren had already known it would come out that way. He'd known from the moment he understood who Marin Calloway was that the board had not been swayed, that the process would be clean because that's the kind of people they were and the kind of people she was. The thing that kept him awake was not the application. It was the fact that he had looked at Avery Cole's daughter, who had spent 16 years inside the federal system doing work that mattered, who drove a 10-year-old car because she'd decided a long time ago not to perform her worth for anyone. He'd looked at her and seen a woman with no name and no standing and nothing to offer. He'd seen a woman from nowhere. And he'd said so out loud in front of 200 people, while she looked at him with those steady gray eyes and waited. He was still waiting, too, for the version of the conversation where he could have it back. The moment before he opened his mouth, the choice he could have made instead. Some mistakes don't clean up. Some things you say become the sentence people remember when they hear your name. 200 people had been in that room. He knew what they remembered. Cole and Avery drove up to Knoxville the following spring. Marin's garden was coming in, and she needed help moving some planters, she said. They spent 2 days doing that and eating on the back porch, and not talking about anything that had happened, because none of it needed to be talked about anymore. On the drive back, Cole said, "Your mother didn't have to do that. Come up to the party. Say what she said." Avery looked at the road. She drove the same way she did everything, calm, unhurried, without needing to be noticed doing it. "She didn't do it for me," Avery said finally. "She did it because she was in the area, and I told her what your father had said, and she decided that some things should be said out loud by someone with the standing to say them." She paused. "She's not a dramatic person. She just doesn't like watching people get smaller than they are because someone with money decided to point at them." Cole nodded. After a while he said, "She's right about what she said to him." Avery smiled a little. "She usually is. She comes by it honestly." The exit signs passed in the dark. The highway stretched ahead, long and quiet, and the radio played something low that neither of them turned up. Here's what I keep thinking about when I sit with this story. Avery never needed that moment. She never needed her mother to walk into that room. She had been before it, and she would have been fine after it, because the thing she had that Warren Whitmore never quite understood, and still doesn't, if I'm honest, is that she had never once measured her worth by whether he recognized it. That's the hardest thing to actually do. Not to perform humility, not to dress down on purpose, just to genuinely not need the room's approval to know who you are. Warren had spent 40 years building a name that other people would recognize. Avery had spent 41 years being a person other people were lucky to know. Those are not the same project. Now I want to hear from you. Be honest. If you had been in that ballroom before anyone knew who Marin Calloway was, would you have said something? Or would you have been one of the ones who laughed politely and looked away? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story stayed with you, do something with that. Like it. Send it to someone who needs to remember that the loudest person in the room is almost never the most important one. Subscribe for more stories about the people who walk in quietly and change everything. Because they're always there. You just have to know how to look.